Welcome back to the Sports Booth and That Rugby Union podcast. You are joined by myself and Hughesy today as we look into the world and everything in rugby after another exciting weekend in international rugby, at least from my point of view. Hughesy, maybe not so much from yours.
Yeah, I think, you know how last week, and for our loyal listeners, you would have heard last week, I said last weekend was World Rugby couldn't, or at least Sands Rugby couldn't have asked for a better week of rugby. I don't think they could have asked for a worse week of rugby than this past one, right? No dramas with the All Blacks. All Blacks smashing the Los Pumas by 50 points. So disappointing from the Argentinians. I saw some those rugby fan pages saying, is Argentina the best Southern Hemisphere rugby team? And it's like, you just know that they're going to get smashed now. And then they got smashed by 50 points. And the worst thing about it is that you asked for them to lose by 50 points. They went ahead and did that. So they not only did New Zealand win, but they gave you what you wanted. So
exactly.
And then Australia lost to South Africa, not because of, but aided by some pretty shoddy refereeing from Ben O'Keefe, who even you agreed is not exactly a shining light amongst the refereeing ranks. Now, when I'm not South African, there's definitely a lot more reasons to be lost than the referees, but that was part of the reason the result was the way it was. But also, Australia, I think we'll get into what the issues were with the Wallabies in a second. But man, that stunk for rugby to start off that way at the new Allianz Stadium. So I don't know if Sansa could have asked for a worse weekend of rugby, because you've got South African fans popping off every corner like, oh, you Aussies, you see what you get this week. Mapipi, he didn't hit Corabetti, it's revenge, blah blah, etc. And then you've got New Zealand winning by 50 points, and no one wants to see that. But in all honesty and less hyperbole, it was sort of a boring weekend of rugby, honestly. If you're a New Zealand fan, putting 50 points on someone is always exciting to watch, but it just makes you think like, oh, same old, same as last year, same as the year before. Why would I bother watching?
Yeah, I mean, it's a take. It was an interesting weekend. Now, I've been begging for a weekend like this in a long time, so normality being resumed is good for me. So, I mean, you are right. I think Sanzar probably went damn, at least one, result probably would have been more beneficial to the whole outlook of the competition. I mean, where the table was sitting right now, the fact that we're separated all by 1 point and that being a bonus point is I think they'd be pretty wrapped with that to have asked for that.
I tell you what as well, yeah, that's pretty good, but everyone's sort of questioning, why is Australia in second place even though they've got a worse for and against? And it's this really obscure sub-law that if three teams are all tied on points, the team that's on top is the team that's won the most games against the other two teams. Now, Australia, and then so it doesn't take into account any games against New Zealand. Amongst South Africa, Australia, and Argentina, Argentina's beat Australia once, South Africa's beat Australia once, but Australia's beaten Argentina once and South Africa once. So that's the reason they have the tiebreaker. And it's like, that's the weirdest rule I've ever heard of. But hey, I'll take it. We're in second place, baby.
It is, and it was confusing to even for you to explain that was confusing. It's a bizarre kind of rule. I can understand it, but yeah, it is a very bizarre rule to be
because South Africa and Argentina haven't played each other yet. That's the reason.
Exactly. Yes, and seems bizarre, but like you said, you take anything to get into that second spot for now. But again, all just separated by 1 point, so I think they'll be happy with that. Looking at the competition with 2 weeks left, I think the games other than the All Blacks being immaculate were pretty disappointing. Even. I don't know if it was the monumental effort the Los Pumas put in the week before that really held them that. It's to back it up against an All Blacks team is another level. To do it 2 weeks in a row, and I think that's what ever is so special about that Irish series. You now look as they took that first loss and then 2 weeks in a row taught New Zealand a lesson, which doesn't often happen. And you can see now Springboks, won the first game. It's very hard to back it up against this New Zealand team. Now, you could say it's hard for New Zealand are inconsistent at the moment, but I think it's more the All Blacks learn from their mistakes and will not, it's a really tough ask to beat them twice in a row. As we can see by the Wallabies' lack of a Bledisloe in the past 20 years, it's not easy to beat the All Blacks twice in a row. But I mean, yeah.
You've put a tattoo on the line for that. Like, that's how strongly you feel about
confident.
beating the All Blacks.
I have no doubt. I have zero doubt that the Bledisloe will be locked away, especially after last week. So, I mean, that was good. And then, the Springboks and the Wallabies game, I said it to you as well. I said, Ben O'Keefe is the best New Zealand ref, and it kind of has the state of New Zealand refs at the moment, where we're definitely not the best in the world at that. But I think there was a lot of weird, like it was just a weird game, I'd say. I'd describe it like not even some calls from his touchies I thought was strange. And just in general, I think World Rugby will look at that game and go on, could that have been not just reffed, but like officiated better in the whole take of things. You had the Alan Aliatoa like penalty for a high clean out, and then you had the tackle on Tom Wright that was very similar, but because he's low, there was just a lot of like TMO decisions that didn't, and it was just it was a weird game. Not saying that you can't take away from the box, but I think we get into kind of discussing each game and its merits. So we'll start with the Springboks and the Wallabies ones, and let's start with the issues that the Wallabies have. Now, I'm going to start first, and then I'll let you rebuttal what I have to say, because I don't have a lot of massive issues.
I don't think I'm going to rebut anything.
Well, it's funny because I don't think the Wallabies actually played that poorly. Now, you lost 24-8. You defended a lot of the time. It wasn't like you were on attack a lot of the time. And in a game where you lose two key players and you only bring in 2 back reserves, that's a risk. Again, when you do that, that risk is normally never eventuates because you might lose 1 player. But to lose 2 players with head knocks and Noah Lolasia and Hunter Pasami, that was really killer, because when you look at it, you didn't have a 10 back up.
Taniela Tupou never got to play.
Never came on, exactly. So it was a big ask, but especially those, because you could see the back line just was decimated after, and I guess it's high praise to Noah because of how bad they looked after he came off, and the fact that Jake Gordon was on a wing for a bit, it was just showed that there was a lot that was happening there that was out of their control, and to only still lose 24-8 when I think the Boks were in a pretty good position there. They should have probably put 40 on you type thing. So I think there was some definite positives to take off. Obviously, I think Rennie will look back and go, okay, a 6-2 split is too much of a risk now. And it's not, I don't mind him taking the risk now, because this is what you hopefully learn for the World Cup next year. Like that and the Bledisloe, like it worked last week. Of course, you back that up. I have no problem with it. Now you kind of go, okay, he wanted to match size with size, and I totally understand that when you're looking at the Springboks, but I think that the risk it poses now is too much of an issue. So that was kind of the big thing from me. When they lost that structure, you lost a bit of everything. I think the forwards worked tirelessly. They just lost at the breakdown. Discipline killed you guys again, and you can say, the ref this and that, but it was the same thing that had you in a bit of issue last week, and it was the same again this week. And Slipper mentioned it about 4 times leading up, and then within the first 5 minutes, he was the one that was offside, and I was just like, that's not what you need your captain to be doing. So, I mean, there was bits and pieces like that, but all in all, other than losing another game of rugby, I still am more impressed by the Wallabies again this year than I was last year, and the improvements they've made under Rennie. I think, there's still some of those growing aches that you've noticed, and is he going to be able to get that out in time for the World Cup next year? I'm not so sure, but I'd love to hear your opinion on it, mate.
Yeah, look, I agree with that. Injuries definitely played a toll in this. Not only injuries within the game, but you got to look outside as well. Like, first choice inside centre Samu Karevi injured, right? First choice number 10 Quade Cooper also injured, and even Noah Lolasia during the game got injured. There's a whole raft of injuries in our backs, particularly, that have really, I think, played a massive toll. Even in the forwards, having Taniela Tupou injured. I think it was pre-game. He had a calf strain or something that knocked him out for the game.
He did it at half time. Pre-half time, he was doing a warm up.
Warm up. Yeah. So before he saw the field, essentially, and you look at other players like Izzy Parisi injured. Corabetti had a bit of a calf issue during the game as well. Whole raft of things, but just like the refs, you can't sort of solely pin it on that as well. For me, I think actually the Aussies were a bit guilty of coming into this game a little bit arrogant after their win last week. I think we even saw it at the end of that game last week where they took their foot off the gas a little bit. I think that's what they were. I think they were guilty of carrying that over into this game, and I think they'll look back at the end of the game from last week and probably regret. And I think you mentioned last week they'll regret that they let those tries in, and they shouldn't have let those tries in because that cost them a bonus point, and it's cost them for and against points as well. Additionally, I think Dave Rennie was probably a bit arrogant coming into this with a completely unchanged lineup. Like we said from game one that Matt Phillip, he's not up to par. To keep him in the starting squad, I think is a mistake. To keep Folau Fainga as a starting hooker, I think was a mistake. And I think the vulnerability of the backs with the lack of depth on the bench was shown as well. It was just it was confusing. It was a bit muddled. Attacking, we just saw that, like you said, when Noah went out, but even when, I think even earlier on in the game, there wasn't really a solid attacking plan. They never really looked that threatening for my mind. I know you say that the Wallabies, the South Africa should be disappointed it ended up 24-8. I think that's probably generous to the Wallabies that it ended up 24-8 because they got that last minute try. And 24-3 is probably more reflective of how that game actually was. So watching that game, what of it I did watch, I turned it off for part of it because I just couldn't stand watching it anymore because, we were not only were the Wallabies just losing all over the field due to the injuries as well as to their own just being worse than South Africa on their day. The refereeing made it hard to watch as well because anytime some momentum was built up, even by either team, it was sort of killed. Like, I don't know if it was necessarily South Africa's fault that they only scored 24. I think the refereeing killed a lot of their momentum as well. So I think they'll probably be unhappy with the way that game was officiated as well. Changes need to be made before the Bledisloe series, for the lineup. Like, Rennie needs to make some changes within the forward pack, especially, and then also on the bench.
Name your team then.
It wasn't up to standard.
If you were to name some of the changes, even just the changes.
The key change would be Parecki starting hooker and Folau Fainga on the bench if they think that is it Gibbon that's the
Pollard
young Reds hooker?
Billy Pollard.
Yeah,
the
Billy Pollard.
Brumbies
if they
hooker,
think he's not ready to go. Yeah, it hasn't been up to par for Folau Fainga. Just hasn't been up to scratch. He's also giving away penalties when the referee early in the game, the referee's telling him you're offside, and he's just standing there shrugging like what? Yeah, and it's like just run backwards a couple meters. Like he was getting up in the face of the South Africans as well. It's like, mate, you haven't thrown a straight line out like all game. So Parecki needs to be the starting hooker for my mind, and then he can. And I think I've preached this for weeks. Fainga is better off the bench, right? He's better when the game's breaking down towards the end. It's a little bit messier. And he can impact in those more situations off the back of the lineup there when their jumpers are a little bit more tired. I'd take Matt Phillip out of the squad completely. Rory Arnold, Darcy Swain to start in the second rows, and then have Nick Frost come on for Rory Arnold when he's filling his age. I do like our current back row setup, so I would probably leave that unchanged, although there might have been some injuries in there. I'm not 100% sure. But I do like what Fraser McWright's doing. I think Rob Valentini's been playing well as well. And Jed Holloway's been serviceable at 6.
So that would be any backline changes if you're going. Well, obviously, you're going to have a new 10, I assume. But yeah.
Yeah, you look like you were about to make a comment, so I was just going to leave you.
Yeah, I'll make a comment then and take that opportunity because what I'm interested in, and this is what I thought. Bobby Valentini's been your best player, I think, probably in these rugby championships, bar when Koroibeti's on fine form. So what I do think is when I saw him playing for the Brumbies at his best, he's a best at 6. Why they can't play him at 6 is because they lose a line-out option, so they want a line-out option. Now, Jed Holloway is 1.96 metres. A young throbber who eventually should be the number 8 for the Wallabies, Harry Wilson, is 1.95 metres. Now, I know the deficiencies that Harry Wilson has, and his mobility is a massive killer on defensive particularly. But I think in the right environment, that is your there. That's your number 8, and that's your backup, your third option at the line out, and move Bobby V back to his proper place, which I think at 6 he will rip into it, like absolutely rip into it. I think at 8 he's probably having to do a little bit too much work around the ground. I'd prefer to see him at 6 and just say, hey, run your lines, make your hard tackles, dominate there. That's just what I've seen from that back row. Again, Jed Holloway, this isn't against him, and he's a skillful player, needs to be in and around the squad as either a lock or a 6. I like what they've done there. He'll be great when it comes to World Cup time for squad depth in those key positions. I just think your best team at the moment with Hooper out is Mick Wright, and then 8 Hooper, 6 Bobby.
You mean
Wilson at 8, sorry.
You mean 8, yeah. Yeah, look, I don't disagree with that either. I don't know if Wilson's an option at the moment for Rennie, if he's fallen out of favour or whatnot. I wouldn't mind to see him back in the squad for his hard hitting as well, like a bit of that thug nature. In the back line, yeah, look, Nick White's been great at halfback for us. Wouldn't change him. 10, I mean, yeah, it depends. I don't know exactly what Lolosia's injury is, but if he's out, then you put Foley in, it seems like, and bring one of the young guns onto the bench, right? Like we've got these guys like Tane Edmed and Ben Donaldson who are like they're the next generation. You need to start blooding them now. Yeah, it's rough going into a game against the All Blacks, but better to come off the bench rather than start. Have Foley be there, and you have great mentors in the squad with Cooper, Foley, even Noah from what he's learned as well. Get one of these young guns in there on the bench as your bench 10, right? The rest of the back line I think is it will be good against depending on injury will be good for the All Blacks. Reese Hodge I think has made himself indispensable at fullback with how he can get under the ball and catches balls and takes that option away from the attacking team. Like the number of high bombs he diffused from the Springboks was crazily good. And you saw when he wasn't the one, they eventually stopped targeting him, and that's the reason they got that fantastic try with that new young Springbok over the top of Corabetti. Corabetti, they recognise Corabetti's got a little bit of injury. He can't really jump that well. We'll target away from Hodge, send it towards Corabetti's side and see what we can come up with there. So I think Hodge has played himself into a role on this team in the fullback spot. I'd like to see Kellaway involved a bit more though.
Yeah, now with that, I'm interested. I think I totally agree with everything you've said about Hodge. But does that change now that you're playing the All Blacks, who are known terrible attacking kickers? Like we have had a terrible record of winning ball back from our attacking kicks. Do you think they go, okay, well, we need to beat the All Blacks with the team we've got, we need to fight fire with fire, and we go Callaway at the back, and then the two Frobbers on the wing if Corabetti and Wright are injured?
I could definitely see that. Like I wouldn't be upset by that. Yeah, it's hard because you look. It's hard for me because at the moment I'm looking at it through the lens of like what changes would I have made against the Springboks, not necessarily what. And it's hard to think, but okay, we're not playing the Springboks now. We're going to be playing the All Blacks. So it's like this is what we could have done better against the Springboks, but also now you can't look at that too much because now you got to look at what have we got to do against the All Blacks. So it is tough. I think. I came into this international season talking about the strength of our centres, but through injury we've started to lose centres, so it's starting to become a bit of a sore spot for us. Now I wouldn't necessarily change the centres, but we need to change our tactics with how we're utilising our centres, because the amount of times I've seen Hunter Paisami or Ikitau run solo with no support is too much. I think they're probably a little too run happy without any support. They need to. You're crossing a road. Look both ways before crossing. Right? You're gonna run an attacking line. Look both ways to make sure you got some support there. And if you don't, wait until you get support or pass the ball. We lost at this level. At Super Rugby level, you could get away with it because the talent isn't as high. This level. You just can't. You'll get isolated. You'll get the ball taken from you. So I think that's what needs to change. And we were punished with that in South Africa at least twice that I saw. So I feel like that the tactics there need to change a little bit rather than the players themselves. Because I think the players are great, but the tactics are not correct.
Point. Yeah, I mean that's some good points, and especially I think as we move into a World Cup, you've definitely the World Rugby and everyone around the world as well is learning this now. Like different lineups for different teams. It's not necessarily your number one lineup is going to beat the Springboks and the All Blacks. You've got to think how can we better counteract a specific team. So New Zealand playing from the Springboks, an example would be you probably play Will Jordan over Sevu Reese. Against Australia, it's you've got Koroibete on the wing and Tom Wright, which aren't these high ball experts as in Mampipi and the young gun. I think it was Mooney, who the Boks have. So yeah, I think as we move in, we'll see more and more players. I think the South Africans rebounded big time. Like that wasn't an easy task to come back from what they had and how much they've struggled in Australia. I think Kolisi played the game of his Tri-Nations, his Rugby Championship so far. I think Damien Willemisi at 10 was it. As much as Andre Bollard is the 10 there, actually worked really well for them. His kicking game was good. And I think it opened up because it meant Willie LaRue came into the team. And I've had a fair dinkum argument with a few people on our social media about my 3-2-1 points because I didn't give Willemisi points and I gave Willie LaRue points. And I thought Willie LaRue's touches and his energy he brought to the team, I think actually lifted it to another level, and I think he was a big part of that win. And I know everyone's saying Willemisi got man of the match. It's easy to step 7 guys when you run across sideways. I should know. It's my clear move. Step off the right where I step off the right and I step off the right. 3 broken tackles. Yeah. I'll take all of those fantasy points, as some would say. I think, the South Africans, it was a big step up, but not a lot changed still from them. I looked at from their game from last week. It wasn't like it was a massive change. It was more, I think, centred around, without arm there, I think they centred their attack more probably balanced a little bit, but it was still balling down in your territory and we'll tick over the points. They actually went to score tries rather than tick over penalties, but again, I think that was just better executed, and they got a little bit lucky with everything that was happening with referee decisions, Wallabies injuries, stuff like that. But again, I think they'll take a massive step.
That first try off the back of some questionable refereeing calling there, that I think that really fired the South Africans up and broke the Wallabies a little bit. And I think you could just see from that point that pretty much decided the game, that first try, and you just sort of saw how everything was going to go from there. So, but it's not to take anything away from South Africans. They came into this wanting it more. They played better, and then they also had the benefit of the cards fell their way as well, and they played to the referee as well. So. They did everything right there. The Wallabies were definitely the worst team on the day. That can be true at the same time as O'Keefe is a bad referee. So those statements can both be true. Neither invalidates the other. Which hopefully some Springbok fans listening to this can realise that it's not always the referee. You can also the referee could be bad, but it also can be that your team played badly on the day. Exactly.
Let's move on to the All Blacks game. We've kind of discussed, I guess, the main points where it was a on fire All Blacks team who I think were a little bit angry with how all their rugby's gone the past 3 months, dating back to Ireland series, and they were ready to put a team to the sword, and it was going to happen. Like I felt it in my bones. Like I honestly went on a sports betting app to try and get a 40 plus winner line because I was so confident that we were going to win. I found one and I made a few dollars into the bank account. But I must say I just felt something coming in the New Zealand performance. We were blessed, I think, with the conditions, which were your typical New Zealand conditions, which was greasy, wet, not so easy to catch a ball. So you've got to actually be at the top of your game.
Much like New Zealanders.
That was a good one. Yes, no, I mean, but yes. Other than that, it was those conditions were made for the All Blacks to win and the Argentinians to have a bad game, and you saw it from kickoff. first hit up, drop ball by Argentina. We score a try within the first 10 minutes. It was like, okay, this was never going to go away. And their handling errors, and I question with Argentina if it was the defense, the aura of last week was just so much that, they couldn't quite get up to that level again. And it's not, again, as you said, it's not, there wasn't like a bad ref. It wasn't like I think this Argentinian's a bad team. This is probably their best team. It was a match made in heaven or hell, depending on who you supported. Like for the All Blacks, it was the perfect conditions and everything right. For Argentinians, it was everything the worst it could be.
Yeah, I think as well, the All Blacks would be fired up for a few things. Obviously the pressure on Ian Foster. I think this game is a ringing endorsement of how the players feel about Ian Foster, because of the huge effort they put in, as well how much they bloody hate Michael Cheika after he sort of called out Foster during the week about breakdown tactics and calling New Zealand dirty and everything like that. I think all the players would have looked at that and I think that was a big mistake by Cheika, because he just added more fuel to an already raging hot fire. And yeah, the All Blacks came out and they looked from like minute one like they were on a mission that game. So yeah, I feel like the New Zealanders just I don't. It'd be hard to see a game in recent memory that they were more fired up for, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's that they were up for this game and you could see it. And yeah, like you sort of mentioned at the top of the show, very hard to back up that effort that Argentina put in last week. And yeah, I think a little bit of the sting of that defeat and that the arrogance from I wouldn't even say arrogance afterwards from Argentina, because they weren't that arrogant afterwards, but just like the confidence of the Los Pumas after that win was probably stung the All Blacks. Like, with how much Argentina was celebrating, and rightly so, because it was impressive what they did. So they were right to celebrate there, but that also, as an All Blacks player and fan looking at that, that sticks in your craw kind of thing. So yeah, all the stars were aligned for New Zealand, and they played all of their cards right. So yeah, balance has been restored to the force kind of thing.
100%. And as we head into a Bledisloe, I haven't felt more confident in my life. However, the big news out of the Bledisloe for the All Blacks camp, at least, and I don't know if you've actually heard this because you probably don't follow the All Blacks on social media. I would assume not.
Why would I?
Ardie Savea is staying home for the birth of his third child, so he isn't travelling to Melbourne, so won't be playing in the Melbourne Test. Yeah. So I think that's a massive loss. Like, what Ardie does, we can see the fact that the past two games, Sam Cane, the All Blacks captain, has come off, and the captaincy's gone to Ardie Savea and not like Sam Whitelock or one of those old heads of the team.
I was about to make a joke and say that with Ardie Savea going, that's your captain gone. Like, that's your real captain gone. But I mean, yeah, there you go. Like, it's your alternate captain gone.
It is. It's our end game captain, and it's right. Like Foster's realised teams do this all over the world. Like it shouldn't be a sacred thing that the All Blacks captain and you play 80 minutes or you only play 70 or 60 minutes when it's a blowout game. It's tactical. Sam Cane showed he can still play rugby, which is good because I hadn't seen a lot of Sam Cane like rugby, and that was the first Sam Cane like rugby I've seen in a while. And he showed he can still do it. And what I want to see is him do 60 minutes of that every week and come off fucked, and we can bring on a frubber like Dalton Popoliti. However, now with Ardie Savea out, it'll make it all that much more interesting because that's a physical presence we lose from the field. There are obviously Hoskins Sotutu and Luke Jacobson's been called into the squad, so I'm not doubting that we'll come to Melbourne and put 50 on you, but it is a little bit of a nerve that I've gained that Ardie Savea isn't going, because the All Blacks team with Ardie Savea is a hell of a lot better than without Ardie Savea.
Absolutely. So yeah, big loss for you guys. So you might put 50 on us, but we'll put 60 on you now.
Well, that would be a game and a half. Fuck, I'd love to watch that. We may try and tee up a live stream if we get some interest. I haven't actually yet had a yarn to Husey about this, but if we do find a way, we may tee up a live stream to commentate
if you could.
one of the games.
If all of our viewers and listeners behave, we might do it.
If you all like our Instagram posts and follow us on social media, then we'll do it. But yeah, that is the gist of it. The only other kind of call out I wanted to make was quickly in the NPC, where Northland actually beat Auckland, which is a very much a little brother versus big brother scenario. Auckland, obviously the biggest city in New Zealand, getting beaten by Northland, the Taniwha, which I think is a fantastic result. The NPC is literally one of the competitions of the year. There's only one really bad team in it this year. And other than that, it's been fascinating to watch. And then in the Shute Shield, the final, anyone but Varsity won it yet again. Yep. So we have to put up with the students celebrating for yet another year, which is no fun for anyone. I know the Queensland Rugby Union's final, their club final is on this week. It's featuring Brothers and Wests, and what can only be considered quite extraordinary, Wests drew the semi-final against Queensland, but went through because they were the highest seed, and after 100-odd minutes, because the extra time ran out and we didn't have a winner. So that was fascinating to see. There was another result, actually, I think it was in schoolboy rugby over here, because they're only allowed to play 75 minutes in New Zealand schoolboy rugby. I think around the world it's only meant to be 75 minutes. They don't play extra time, so it was 20 all at the end of time, and it's most tries win. If you've got the same number of tries, it's first try wins. So whoever scored the first try went through, and I think it was Napier on this occurrence that knocked out St. Pat Silverstream, which I will always support because they are an arch nemesis back home. But yeah, other than that, not a lot in the rugby world. We've got a weekend break before we head into the Bledisloe on a Thursday night in Melbourne, and then we have Springboks against Argentina. So exciting week next week, but nothing on international wise this week. I believe all Northern Hemisphere club rugby kicks off, so any big news out of there we will keep you up to date with as well. But for now, thank you for joining us on That Rugby podcast. We will be back again, same place, same time next week. See ya.
Peace.